Welcome back, baseball fans, to the Carryover League 76789. We watched the game 3 where the Braves got eliminated, and it was up to the Mets to win the last 2 games to salvage the season and sneak into the wild card spot. Didn't happen. Jerry Koosman lost game 4. Braves and Mets are toast. Well, they're not very good either. So what it means is that the San Diego Padres are in the playoffs, and they'll have Randy Jones pitch, which is pretty scary. And a 1-game playoff? Are you kidding me? So watch out for that, folks. That'll be fun to look forward to. And actually, I'd rather have Randy Jones in a 1-game playoff with the Padres than either of these two teams. So we're going to eliminate the Braves first, then the Mets. Do it in the same video here. They got sent down at the same time. And see who's coming back for the Braves, who's coming back for the Mets. Okay. Well, it's going to be the Braves sending 9 hitters back and 3 pitchers. So I hope the hitters are good. They probably will be, I predict. Oh, they got a decent catcher, first baseman. They still have Davey Johnson who plays second. Actually, Royster's second. Johnson's third. A glut of outfielders and designated hitter. That's a glut. You've got Matthews. You got Matthews, Jones, Stanton, Bunnell, and Rico Carty. So you get a lot of stuff's clogged up. You're welcome to make a trade. You need a catcher versus lefties. You need a couple of shortstops in a platoon. You got abundance of outfielders. Now on the pitching staff, you got 2 good pitchers, Nico and Underwood. They both rotate. Righty-lefty rotating pitchers, which is nice, and Dave Campbell at the back of the bullpen. For the Braves, that ain't bad. And the 8 guys up for keeping, waiving, or retiring, it was Ellie Rodriguez and the 2 shortstops, Phillips and Gomez. You have to expect you can do better than at short at that. The 2 starters were Messersmith and Boggs. Boggs moves from the Rangers to Texas. Messersmith near the end of his rope. The bullpen was just dreadful, so it's going to be addition by subtraction here. Torrealba, Devine, and Crawford. So that's it for the Braves. And now let's take a peek at the Mets. Get rid of their 76 guys. And interesting period for the Mets, as we will see with one of their players. Mr. Seaver has a situation we will examine. So this is not a good situation because the Mets, unfortunately, are keeping 9 hitters and 3 pitchers. Well, Steve Henderson's good. Probably DH, so he can play left field. Kind of scary out there, though. You have 2 catchers, Stearns and Grody. We saw them both. They're both right-handed. They kind of duplicate each other. Redundancy there. Don't really have a first baseman. Tommy Helms was scraping by at second. Covage at third. Oh, you still have Chuck Scribner. Well, that's good. Chucky's coming back for another year. Yeah. You got Claudel. Did a pretty good job, believe it or not, hitting lefties and righties, even though he only got 284 on the card. But that was a good card. Surprisingly good card there. Youngblood, bad card, good effort. And Mazzilli's noodle arm in center field is, really starting to hurt this team a little bit. And as far as the pitching goes, the 3 guys we're talking about here are going to be Seaver, Swan, and Hausman. There's a little trick to this thing that we've been doing here with Tom Seaver. And that is, we allowed him to stay in New York an extra year instead of making the big trade to the Reds. So, already he was granted a reprieve from that. He actually is the property of the Reds in 77. And it's the 77, 78, 79, 80. So I think in this off season we'll make the deal. We'll make the deal in this off season just to improve this squad. So maybe Let's assume the Reds win the World Series, which is not a bad assumption, really. They are absolutely loaded. They might have some talent they want to deal to the Mets so as they can get Seaver on the Reds to get a repeat in the following season. So that's something to consider. The 8 guys the Mets lose are going to be... Torrey's probably done. Manguel's not great. Boswell's not that great either, so that's not good. You'll probably replace McGraw and Matlack, and Kuzman, your 3 lefties, are all up at the same time. Now this is a problem because you only keep 4. So you got 2 good quality relievers, and you got your big 3 lefties all up at the same time. This is not a good scenario because you can only keep 4, and I can see not keeping any of these guys, but you probably want to keep these 3. So let's see what the Mets and Braves decide to do. Okay, folks, where are we? That's right, Braves and Mets. Sorry about that. Had a problem with the video, have to redo it. Always hate when that happens. That's just the way things kind of go sometimes. The Braves and Mets. Let's just go through what they did as far as keepers and waivers. Starting with Luis Gomez. This won't be a very long video. Luis Gomez had a nice little run, but it's time for him to go once we get the right one. Luis. 74 to 81. Thank you for the service in Toronto and a couple stays in Atlanta. He can come back, certainly, out of retirement, but he's a defensive player, not an offensive player, so the Braves let him go. Next up is Mike Phillips. And Mike Phillips, in an interesting move, you see him wearing a Mets hat. He could have actually been a keeper, as he had a 77 card, and he plays through at least to 83 with the Mets, Cardinals, Montreal, San Diego. But they retired him because of performance. So anybody can pull him out of retirement. Ellie Rodriguez, one of 2 Ellies in the league other than Elrod Hendricks. I guess he's Elrod. Ellie Rodriguez is done now. 76 is his final year. He has to be retired. So next on the list is Messersmith. It was not a good trade getting him off the Dodgers. And he kind of fizzled by the time he was 33 there. Played 3 more years for the Braves, the Yankees, the Dodgers. Couldn't quite find the magic he had as a younger man, and so they can put him on waivers, even though he's got 3 years left, has a 77 card, and someone might take a shot at him. Next up is Tommy Boggs. And Tommy Boggs, he actually pitched for the Braves and the Rangers. He has like a good year at 80. That card can come back. And they might very well do that card with the Braves. So that's what they're thinking, is making him the $10,000 keeper. So he's the first of the keeper, and you're going to see a couple more popping up here. Pablo. And they're the 6th one on the list of Pablos. He's got a good year in Oakland in 77. And any lefty is valuable in the 4-year carryover league, as we look highly on left-handed pitching when you can find it. So he'll get in the league and be a keeper. Adrian Devine, he's right-handed, so clearly not as important, but he is on the Braves during this period. The Braves, the Rangers, the Braves, the Rangers. They seem to have a back and forth thing going on there. This 77-year with Texas is pretty good. So the Braves are going to give him one more shot. That's 3 keepers now. And Jim Crawford, well, they didn't deem him a keeper. Oh, look at all the Crawfords. Jim Crawford played for Houston and Detroit, I believe, yes. And he's got 2 more years, which means he qualifies for waivers. The years are not very good. The whips are above 1.6. So you can technically stash them on the waiver list, so you have 2 waiver guys, which is what they do. So before the draft begins, they need a keeper. They could decide to simply keep Mike Phillips, or to make a trade. Making a trade makes more sense. Next up, the Mets. All right, let's start with Ken Boswell. I think he might be near the end of his rope. Got the Mets hat on. Look at that, Mets in Houston. And he's got a year in 77 that's not very good, so let's retire him. First retiree. Next up, Pepe Mangual, not to be confused with Angel. So Pepe from 72 to 77. He played on the Expos and then the Mets. And 76, that was a decent year. 77, he's toast. He had 7 at-bats, so he has to be retired. Next up is Joe Torre. Joe Torre. Watch him get the manager card. No, we get the hitter card. Good. So he actually did step into the box in 77 for 54 at-bats, and that was enough to show that he shouldn't have done that. So he's on the retire list. 3 retirees, Boswell, Mangual, and Torre, so they're going to have to make a move as well. Let's go directly. We're going to skip a discussion on Tom Seaver for the moment, since he is not... He's a 77 card, so he's not in this discussion. Kuzman, though, 76 Kuzman will go away, and then where do you go from there? He's got a 20-game winning season for the Twins. He would win later on. He does well for the White Sox and Phillies in a long career. But I think the Mets, just like they did with Seaver, they like to hold on to the past. They're going to hold on to Kuzman for 1 more year, even though he was 8-20. But you know, they could rig this so they get the 79 Kuzman. So I mean, they held on to Seaver, the Cincinnati Red card, Tom Seaver, and they're holding on to Kuzman. And the next guy up for bids is John Matlack. On the prices, right? And Matlack, his golden runs is starting to get stale here. 3 straight All-Star games. Then he scuffles in 77 in the trade to the Rangers. Immediately pays dividends for Texas in 78. So what you do in a case like this is you technically keep him, but you put a note to trade him. So you're going to have the phones ring and trade him to the Rangers and see what you can get in a deal. Because you may actually be able to improve your 12 carryover guys if you deal Matlack. Clay Carroll's the next guy, and Clay he starts to fall off a little bit here. He's had a great decade to this point, a couple All-Star appearances. 77, his ERA is good, but that's his final year really, and he's got a very curious split in that, where he's dominant against righties and susceptible, terribly bad against lefties for whatever reason. So I would just put him on waivers and have somebody take a chance on him. Next up is Tug McGraw, and when you see the card, you'll see the Phillies hat on, and we know he makes the final out of the 1980 World Series for the Phillies. And it's time for the Mets. Look, he played for the Phillies way back in 75. And the Mets, you can't keep holding on to these guys. So the commissioner's going to start forcing trades. We're going to, come down hard on the Mets. You guys, you got to, get rid of these. You can't keep holding on to 1969 here. You got to move Seaver. Probably move Kuzman, though you don't have to. You could hold on to Kuzman. He did actually play for the Mets in 77. And you got to move McGraw. I mean, just make some trades, dude. You'll get good value in a trade. So we'll see. It'll be a fun offseason for the New York Mets here. Apodica's the last guy on the list with a Mets hat on. 77, he's still decent. So let's put him on the keeper list. He's not a great player. I understand that. But if you end up trading keepers McGraw and keeper Matlack, you're going to need keepers. So Apodica might need to be one of those. So that's it. It's 4, 1, and 3 with trades on the way for the Mets. And one last discussion on Tom Seaver before we wrap this up. Because it's a 77 Seaver card, he's going to pitch. It appears like he's going to pitch another year with it as a member of the Mets, even though in 77 he split time with the Mets and Reds. Which is, you know, he really should be traded to the Reds. If you let him finish up with the Mets in all of 77, right? And then his card is up at the end of the next season, and then the trade is done, the four-year carryover league, you can skip 78, 79, and 80 and go right to 81, and looky what we have here. In 1981, Seaver led the league. This is the year of the strike. 36-year-old Seaver, 14 wins, led the league. He had a .111 whip, and he was on the best team in the National League with the best record, the Cincinnati Reds, who, unfortunately, based on the strike, they split the season into halves, and the Reds finished in second place in each of the first and second half to the Dodgers and Astros, and missed the postseason with the best record in baseball. So just a quick recap, with Seaver, with a 311-game winner, 286 lifetime ERA guy, in the four-year carryover league format, I just want to say that you could, from 81 to 77 to 73 to 69, for a 16-year run, you could have ERAs of 221, 208, 258, 254. And you take the average of that, and you're going to find a number less than 286. So, based on how the four-year carryover league is played, you could have a 16-year run of Seaver during this time where he's actually better than his Hall of Fame numbers indicate, which should be scary to the rest of the National League. Maybe he does get traded to the Reds, and they pony up a ridiculous... Well, here's a guy I've been thinking about. You know, ever heard of this guy? I'm thinking the Reds might, you know, if you really want Seaver, and you know that this guy here will play for the Phillies in 1979, you might want to think of asking for him in return. Straight up. Tom Seaver, Pete Rose. What do you think? Because what happens is, old Pete, he doesn't start playing first base until he finds out that there's some guy named Mike Schmidt playing third base for the Phillies. So he moves over to first. Who do the Mets have at first base in 1979? Let's look at well, I wanted to look at the whole league here, National League East. The Mets typically don't have much going on at first base in this era. Willie Montanez, not a great year. He has a good year eventually, but not that year. Jorgensen will be on the team in 80. And eventually, it'll be a while before they get Keith Hernandez. Montanez again in 78, and then 77. It is Milner, who's on an expansion team, I believe. What do you say we just have the Mets, give the Mets Charlie Hustle? Because I don't even think the Phillies need him. At least not in Strat-O-Matic. Obviously, you know, in the real baseball, I'm sure they'd love to have him. But when you look at Pete, going back to Pete Rose a bit, he actually, the 2 years the Phillies went to the World Series, he wasn't very good. Right? The 80 World Championship Phillies, Pete only hit 282. I don't know why I can't get the actual team here. There we go. So, Carlton, Schmidt, McGraw, Trio, McBride, Ruthven, Lonnie Smith, Gary Maddox, Marty Bystrom, Larry Christensen, Del Unser, Larry Boa. Where's Mike Schmidt? I mean, should be. He's right there. Where's Pete Rose? He's nowhere to be found in this World Series team as far as WAR goes. And let's go to 83 for a moment. This is the 83 Phillies lost the World Series to the Orioles. You got Denny, who's a really good John Denny card. You got Schmidt, Carlton, Al Holland, the good reliever they got from the Giants. How about Joe Morgan, they came from Houston? Charles Hudson was a good rookie. Bo Diaz, a solid catcher. Joe LaFay, Willie Hernandez. A year before he goes to the Tigers, wins the World Series. Ivan DeJesus, Kevin Gross. Again, Pete Rose, nowhere to be found. So, I'm saying that the Phillies don't really need him. And that's my discussion. I'm really thinking long and hard of trading Tom Seaver for Pete Rose. If you have any comments about that or other options of what to do with Tom and Pete, please feel free to use the comment section. All right, that's it for the elimination videos of the Braves and Mets. We'll see you next time.